Welcome to FastBeam for Tekla Structures, created by CMK BIM Consulting. We've got some exciting new features in version 2.0, and let's go ahead and dive in. After we've got the initial grid input, we're going to be able to save away different profiles in different groups. So we might have beams, we might have joist, angles, as well as maybe even columns. Now, before we get started modifying or inputting any of our members, we want to come in here to the profile settings. This is where we can create rule groups, basically saying that for any particular profile type, what are the name, class number, material grade, as well as the prefix settings that we want to use. We can even come in here and set phase numbering. So if we input pieces in phase 1 versus phase 2, we can include that phase number in the start number or in the prefix of that particular part or assembly based on whatever we check here. Now what's really great is that you can basically specify filters for specific profiles as well as what is the member type, whether it's a beam or it's a column. So on W flange for columns, I'll probably want a C assembly prefix, but for beams, I'll want a B prefix. Once that's all set, you're going to then come in and start to input members in your model. Let's go ahead and start applying some columns. We'll simply activate the column command by clicking on the profile button, and if we just double click, it's going to insert a column. When we're all done, we can right click and press interrupt. Now let's say that we want to modify the rotation on some of these columns. So we'll just select these and then we'll just press the rotate 90 degrees button, and you'll see that the columns actually rotate around. Now, if we want to change the profile on any of these, we can again select these columns here, and then we just press the other profile button, and you'll see that that modifies. Then let's say that we want to change the bottom of base plate or top of footing elevation here. Let's do -2'6", then we'll just press the start button. This then modifies the bottom of those selected columns. If there were other columns that were of a different size and we want to modify their bottom of base plate elevation, we can again press that, and the profile will stay the same and only that particular property gets modified. If we need to add a new column to the group here, we'll just say HSS 8x8 as an example, and we can look for the size that we need. So here I'm going to use an HSS 8x8 by half. I then just add it here, and then I'll save that into the columns group. So now I can go ahead and apply those HSS 8x8s. Simply press the button, I then pick the point twice or double click, and essentially that HSS 8x8 or those new columns are now input into the model. If I'm a checker and I just want to quickly check this in the project viewer, I can just select on all the columns, press the get button here, and it's going to draw all those labels for me. I can then quickly verify that everything is the right profile at the right elevations and the right rotation. Let's go ahead and add in some beams. We'll load up the beams group here. You can see the end elevations are set for this particular floor or roof level, and some of the common beam sizes that I'm going to be using are already set up here. To insert a beam, we just simply click on the button, and then we're just going to go ahead and pick the first point and the second point. Now, if we interrupt here, we'll see that there is this unlock button. When the unlock button is checked, if I pick the beam command here and I pick at these locations, it's going to go exactly where I pick. But let's say that I don't want that. I want this to go exactly to the elevations I set. So if this is unchecked, and then we basically pick these 2 points, or if we pick these 2 points down here at the bottom of the grid, it's always going to put those beams in at the correct elevation. Now that we've got our main girder beams in here, let's do some infill beams. So I'm going to set the number of beams to go inside of this bay to be 2. Then I'm just going to go ahead and click on the profile that I want to enter in here, and now instead of picking points, I'm prompted to pick a part. So I'm going to pick the first girder, which is the start end of the beams, and then the second to span those beams across that bay. So again, we can copy these, or if we just activate the command, let's say that we do a different beam size here. We'll pick on the girder, and then the second girder, and then those beams are added. Now let's say that these W18 by 35s, they actually have a camber that needs to be set on them. So what we can do is we can just say 3/4 of an inch here, and then we can just press the C button, and it's going to modify and set the camber user-defined attribute. Now if we press the Get button here, it's going to then show us the properties, and we'll see that the C equals 3/4 has been added. Now what we can also do is, let's say that we want to set the connection code at the end of these. So we know that these are all W18s and they're going into beams, so we might have a start and an end connection code here of W18-beam and then W18-beam. And we might want to write that there to the user-defined attributes so we can use those for connection application or showing that on our drawings. Again, if we input these values here and we just want to modify something that's already in the model, we can just press the button next to that field and it's going to modify just that specific property. Now, if you want these properties to be set when you're inputting the beam versus modifying it afterwards, then you just have this checked here for UDAs. So upon creating a new beam, the user-defined attributes that are all set down here are then going to be applied. So you have to be very careful with this, that you have exactly what you set before you start inputting beams if you have this checked. So let's say that we do 18 by 35, and again I'm just going to pick these two beams here, and then now we can see that all those properties are set as well as inputting those members at the same time. Now these other fields here are the shear end reaction. So let's say that we have 12 kips on one end, 8 kips on the other, just to show a difference. And again, if we just press the button, it will modify those properties. And so we just press that next to that there. Then there's a capacity. So maybe you know the capacity of the connection you're selecting, and then you just kind of press those buttons to modify that. And then there's a moment yes or no, so that way you can show the moment symbol on your drawings. And so if that's there, you'll just modify that. Again, if you want to see the actual properties that have been set and check and make sure everything's good, you can do that. And then you'll see here on the left, it shows the elevation, shows the connection code, shows the reaction, capacity, and that this is a moment connection. If the moment is not set or any of these values are not set or at 0, then it won't display any of those properties. So let's grab this W12 by 14 as an example, and you'll see that there's a lot less reported because none of those user-defined attributes have been set. Okay, now what if I have a channel here that I want to put in as an opening? I need to make sure that I turn off my number of beams at 0 or 1, because now I'm just going to be individually putting in a channel instead of picking two beams to put in filler beams. So once I've done that, I'm just going to press this C8 by 11.5. Now I'm just going to use Control left click here, and I'm going to put something in 4 feet to the left, and then I'll just span across there. So now notice what's really cool about this is that it knows to use the correct material grade, the prefixes, the class number. Everything that we had previously set up here inside of the profile settings is correctly being used. Now the toe direction might not be right for us here. So there's this great little swap handles. So when you press that, it just swaps the handles so that way the channel is towing the correct direction. So you can easily do that for angles or channels to quickly get things to move and be orientated the way that you want. Now the last feature, which is also the most powerful feature of FastBeam, is the ability to do roof slope geometry. We're going to go ahead and start with our column here, and I'm going to check this Adjust Secondaries checkbox or button. Now I'm going to go ahead and get the column elevation, and I'm going to type 12'6", so that way this top of column drops 1 foot. When I press the Modify button here for the end, you'll see that the girders that are coming into that have now changed their slope to follow that top of that column. Now let's say that we want the beams framing into that to also follow. So we're just going to go ahead and select on this beam, we'll press Get, and then we're just going to simply press the elevation modify, and it looks for any beams framing into that. And we just repeat this process. So you get the beam here so that way the current properties are loaded, and then if you just press the end here, it's going to modify any of the beams that are framing into it. So we'll just repeat this, and then now that I've got that, I can basically come in here and I just say modify, and it grabs any beams. So we just grab this one, and then we just go ahead and say modify. Let's do this last one here, and we'll just go ahead and say modify, and then all of the pieces are now following those slopes. Let's grab this last one here, and then we'll just say modify, and now we have a complete roof slope. if you imagine all the time that it would have taken for you to lay in points or vertical construction lines and offset this, or even put in magnetic construction lines and try to move things around, this is just much faster. You just pick the pieces, press modify, and it does all the searching and slopes the framing for you. So if you're ready to reduce errors, have more room to breathe on your submittal dates, as well as get more done, then reach out to us at CMK BIM Consulting in order to buy FastBeam and some of our other tools.